Last episode, my clutch pedal gave out, making it impossible to shift. Luckily, I was able to pull the car behind our building after driving in third gear for like 30 minutes on the highway. The clutch always grabbed very low to the ground since the day I got it, and it finally just got worse to the point where it was unusable. The fluid was full and I didn't see any leaks, so my initial thought was the pedal adjustment lock was loose and had slowly gotten more out of spec over time. You should be able to simply loosen the lock nut and turn the rod connected to the pedal to raise or lower the clutch grab point. I tried it, but unfortunately the threads that do that were frozen stuck, and working outside in essentially the mud was a huge pain, so I decided to just give up. It's now been sitting out here for almost a week. Luckily though, it seems the T-top leaks are like 90% fixed, so that's good news. Today though, we are gonna tow and push the car into the garage so I can actually work on it indoors and hopefully get this thing sorted out. Okay, now thankfully we got it indoors so I can work again. If we look back down at the pedals again, we can see the clutch push rod. When you push the pedal, this gets pressed and activates the clutch lines. Again, the threads to adjust its grab point are frozen, so I can't do much about it. Right now, I'm looking at the clutch master cylinder. This is the thing the push rod physically connects to and has the fluid inside it. I didn't notice this at first, but the fluid inside is just pure black. That stuff should be clear, so I'm starting to think the fluid may be really old and causing issues. If you look under the car towards the back here, you can look up and see the clutch line bleed valve. I'm gonna bleed the line out and try to change and flush some of the old fluid and possibly get some air out. If the fluid is really old like it looks like, then this could actually be what's wrong. I'm not gonna film it just because fluid is inevitably gonna make a mess and I don't wanna get that stuff on my camera, but the process is the same as bleeding brake lines, so it's pretty simple. Okay, I just bled the lines and there was a good amount of air and the fluid was just disgusting. It was so gross I dumped it before I could get a shot of it. Like, it truly was just black. I wish I could have flushed it more and got it all completely out, but we unfortunately ran out of new fluid. Luckily though, so far, if I start the car and push my clutch in, I can actually shift into gear again. It's still very squishy and grabbing low, but it's at least drivable now. It feels a little better than it originally did too. So I can drive the car again, but I definitely need to come back and finish the job next time. It is finally time to hopefully remove the Plasti Dip once and for all. Now on camera, the car probably looks better than in real life. This Plasti Dip has been a major eyesore from day one. Now, realistically, I do not expect the paint underneath to be much better, but I really would rather have real but bad paint than bad Plasti Dip that just looks like it's been sprayed on in under an hour. Plus, when I do repaint the car, I'm gonna have to get this stuff removed anyways. I've tried a few methods to get this stuff off, but my newest plan is I've brought it to a self-serve car wash and I'm going to use their pressure washers to spray it off. I bought some garbage bags to cover the wheels too, just because I don't want stray Plasti Dip staining the tires or wheels. I'm also going to be thickly coating the car in tons of Goo Gone to melt the Plasti Dip. I have a few more bottles in my trunk if I need them, and I've used this stuff in the past and it really does seem to work, so hopefully this will be kind of the key component here. And now it's time to just go at it. Lots and lots of Goo Gone. Got the car just about coated. I think I'm gonna give it a spray now, and if there are any leftover spots, then I'll use more Goo Gone and go again. I mean, I guess worst case, I can even use the brush, but that is pretty much committing a car sin if the paint was even half decent. Now, okay, as I spend this time to spray the car down, I do want to just talk about my thoughts on Plasti Dip. I hate it. Do not use Plasti Dip. Now look, I get it, it can be done well if done right and professionally. The point is it's cheap and you should be able to peel it off when you're done, but the thing is most people who use it have no idea what they're doing and just get overspray everywhere and don't do a thick enough coat, so it's impossible to peel off. On top of that, when it's done on cars like mine, the paint is so bad that the Plasti Dip isn't on a smooth surface, so it just gets glued on. I personally don't even like the matte look on cars, which is what Plasti Dip gives. It overall is just not worth it. I'd prefer vinyl wrapping a car if you really don't want to get actual paint, but man, Plasti Dip just sucks. Okay, it's the next day. I didn't film the aftermath last night because by the end, there was a pretty huge mess. I really should have brought some paper towels because the Goo Gone sprayer kind of sucked and got the stuff all over my hands. On top of that, the pressure washer obviously just blasted through my T-tops and got liquid Goo Gone Plasti Dip all over my seats. So when I was done, I just had to drive straight home and clean up myself and my interior. But anyways, now I can show off the end result. I got about 90% of it off, with the last bits just being some small stuck-on spots here and there that I'll probably just have to hand wipe off with a rag later. I probably could have got them last night, but I was just so ready to go home and clean up. And now that I can see the real paint underneath, I have uncovered some interesting stuff. First off, you can actually see the decals now, including the stripes and the Toyota logo. These were completely painted over, and I do like seeing them now. That's where the positive points end though. We can also get a better look at the dent now too. You can see some of the wheel arch is damaged through the paint. Also, the front bumper is just absolutely gross. This was the hardest part to spray, so there is some Plasti Dip still, but it's just very rough and really needs a refinish. There are also a few spots where the clear coat is just barely hanging on. One of the interesting spots as well is the spoiler. I'm not really sure what's up, but this seemed to be the most stubborn part to spray. As you can see, I only got a tiny bit off. I'm also confused because it's grayish white under the black, but there are some small chips that show it's also red underneath that. So I'm not really sure what is going on here. It's almost like they repainted it from red to this gray and then Plasti Dipped it or used some cheap spray paint to make it black. Very bizarre. However, the most strange spot is actually the front fender. Now, I always knew something was up with this panel since the first week I got the car and began peeling some of the Plasti Dip off. The paint underneath was always slightly different from the rest of the car, and now I can see it's got what looks like primer showing. Furthermore, I've noticed at points there are actually a couple of the screws missing that mount the panel to the body. So my only guess is at some point this fender was damaged and either they took it off and repaired it or they just replaced the fender entirely. Either way, they seem to not have even bothered repainting it properly. So there you go. I guess that's one more reason not to buy a Plasti Dip car. There's most likely some weird stuff underneath that's being hidden. Now, honestly, am I surprised by any of this? No, I really am not. I've known since getting this car, this thing is a piece of junk, but you know, it's my piece of junk now, so better days are ahead for it. Now, I know that's a lot of negativity for the car, but I have noticed another pretty major thing about the MR2. Since driving it for a bit now, I've noticed this thing just devours oil. As far as I can tell, it doesn't actually leak at all, but it burns like crazy. It's normal for any old car to burn oil, but this goes through a quart of oil every gas fill up. That is a very unhealthy amount to be burning and needs to be addressed. Otherwise, I'm one missed fill up away from running out of oil and seizing the engine. Now, there are two possible sources. It could easily be the piston rings or cylinders are worn out and a full engine rebuild is needed. That's the worst case, but it could also just be the valve stem seals are leaking and letting oil seep in from the head into the cylinder and burn off that way. If that's the case, only the head has to be disassembled and the engine can stay in the car. The only way to know though is to perform a compression test, which I plan on doing when I change my spark plugs another time. It's been about a week or so since I last filmed. We are now officially synced back up with the end of the last episode. My dad just bought his blue MR2, and again, it came with a whole spare car of extra parts, including an engine. Good timing, as I was just talking about a possible engine rebuild. But anyways, that's not what I'm here to do right now. I came to finish fixing my clutch line problem. I got more fluid, and I'm gonna try to flush and bleed the system entirely this time, but I also went out and bought a new master cylinder. I figured for $20, this is worth doing now, just in case mine happens to be worn as well, or just clogged up with all that nasty old fluid. Plus, it includes a new push rod, which mine is frozen, so this is perfect. First thing to do is to line the adapter piece to be vertical so it matches the line in the car. You also should tighten down the bolt inside that holds the reservoir in place, just in case it's loose when they ship it. Then I gotta unhook the push rod from the pedal itself. Now, as you can see, the clutch master cylinder is in a very crammed spot. The shock tower, strut brace, and brake booster are all in the way. You probably should remove the strut brace, but I'm gonna try to do it without. There are just two nuts that hold the master cylinder into the firewall, but I'm most worried about the nut that attaches the line to the adapter. The mounting nuts aren't too bad, but you do need a specific sized extension in order to not run into things. Now, getting that line off is a different story. I was definitely right that there is very little room to work with. Mine is on very tight as well, so I feel like I'm just rounding off the nut as I try to loosen it. I wasn't able to get it off quite yet, but I did decide I should probably empty the reservoir of fluid before removing the line, because otherwise I'm just gonna make a huge mess as it spills everywhere. Well, I went to the store and of course they were out of basters. Waste of time. However, I did come up with another idea. We have an old soap bottle, so I emptied it out and I'm gonna use this instead. Pretty genius save if you ask me. Now just look how disgusting that is. There's more of this stuff in the lines too. This should be clear and slightly yellow, not pure black. I'm almost under the suspicion somebody used the wrong fluid or something weird. It's almost like they used old engine oil. I've been at it for a bit and I just cannot get the line disconnected. I really don't know how you're supposed to do it, so I've come up with another idea. I'm going to remove the adapter off instead. Hopefully that isn't stuck on as tight. Well, I managed to loosen it, but getting it all the way off takes a very long time, as you can just barely get a fraction of a turn in each time. I have to admit, this whole cylinder swap is taking a lot longer than I hoped. Finally, I managed to get everything holding the cylinder in off, but now of course there's one more issue. The brake line is in the way, so I can't just pull it out. I have to remove the reservoir from the top, and then I should be able to slide the cylinder out. Finally, after all that, I was able to remove it. Took long enough. Of course, I gotta remove the adapter off the new cylinder since I'm reusing the old one that's stuck in place. Getting the new cylinder in place was pretty easy. It just slides on and bolts in place. However, getting that line adapter reattached to the new cylinder took absolutely forever. And yes, I checked to make sure they were indeed the same size. I've spent maybe 15 minutes so far just standing in place, hunched over, trying to line up the bolt just right to land in place. What makes it really hard is you have to keep this washer gasket thing on the end of the screw on, and then you gotta just blindly move the bolts around, hoping you find the right spot and angle to screw it into the cylinder. It's all kind of hard to describe, and There wasn't really much space to actually film what I'm talking about, but seriously, just take my word, it took absolutely forever to get. It's just pure luck. Well, I finally got it in place. I think that took me maybe 30 minutes to line it up and tighten down. It's funny, the new master cylinder only cost me $20, so I was like, why not just replace it while I'm at it? And that was a huge time sink. I started at 5 p.m. and it's now 10. I almost called it quits and went to bed, but I gotta get this all ready for tomorrow because my dad is coming to help bleed it and needs the space for another car right after. Even after all that, we still aren't done. I still gotta connect the push rod to the clutch pedal. Luckily, that was pretty easy, and since it's new, I can actually turn the adjustment threads now. Only thing is, it's impossible to tell where to adjust it to, so I'm gonna just have to put it here for now and adjust it once the system is bled. I should be able to finally adjust my clutch grab point now too. Now, it is very late, but I still have a couple other things I wanted to do. Ever since spraying my car down, the interior has smelled like chemical Plasti Dip Goo Gone mix. I wiped the inside down, but I think part of it is coming from some Plasti Dip caught in my air dams. These just pop out, so I might as well clean it before I get lung cancer or something from breathing this stuff in. There's definitely some Plasti Dip chunks in there, but as you can see, it's also just full of other random junk, so a cleaning is worthwhile regardless. I just wish the sink I was using was a little bigger, but whatever. Obviously, not perfect. It's hard to get everything out, but way better than it was. After all that work and hardship, I can finally have my dinner. It's been months since I've stayed the night out here at the garage instead of home. I definitely don't miss doing this, but you gotta do what you gotta do for your car. It's the next morning, I feel rested up, and finally it's time for my dad and I to bleed the lines again and hopefully get all that gunk out. Just look at the new reservoir. The old one was stained black because it was just so dirty. Okay, we just bled the lines. You can see more of the old fluid that was in there. I swear this just can't be brake fluid. This has to be some other crap they used. I've also adjusted the pedal height and free play to what they're supposed to be. I gotta be honest, it still grabs a little weird. It's a bit low and squishy, but it is in fact in spec and just leagues better than it was before. My only other guess now is either the slave cylinder is going out or the last owner installed some strange aftermarket clutch that is causing weird issues. Either way, again, it is way better and it does work fine for now. Replacing the slave cylinder or clutch is not a job for now, as both seem to be even harder than what I've already done. My dad brought up the last bin of spare MR2 parts. I didn't see these last episode, so I thought I'd give it a look. There's a few noteworthy things in here, like the tail lights, vents, and even a very nice mirror. Just needs a wipe down. Also, what I'm excited about are the spare seatbelts. I think something is up with mine because it doesn't really retract very well, which is annoying and also probably not safe. But what I really want to do is swap the belts out for red ones to just pop a bit. So I'll probably do that with these, then just swap them in. Also, my dad's bringing the Mustang Mach 1 in to get its paint stripped. The last thing I want to do for today is get the spare engine mounted on an engine stand. I'm still debating what I'm going to do with this thing, whether I strip it down now and start rebuilding it, or wait until I can actually afford it and give priority to other things on the car for now. But either way, I want to get it on the stand just so it's off the ground and out of the way. The only thing stopping me is the clutch and flywheel need to be removed to fit, so I just need to unbolt them. My dad was told the engine was seized when he got it, which kind of worried me, but after unbolting the clutch, it's clearly not, as everything seems to be moving freely, so good news. The flywheel may be a bit trickier. Just look at all those bolts. One thing is, if it does move around too much, when I try loosening things, you're supposed to use like a screwdriver and have it hold the teeth in place so that it doesn't rotate. Unfortunately, going at it for a bit, these do not want to come off. I'm gonna need a heavy-duty torque wrench, but it's not here right now, so I guess I'll just have to pick this up next time. Well, it's been over a month since I've done anything on the car. I have to admit the car does still need quite a lot that I want to do, but lately I've just been driving the car without any issues other than burning oil, and it has been very fun. I haven't given up on the build, but I have been busy with other stuff. On top of that, it's been freezing out, so working on the car and working extra hours for funds isn't the greatest time right now. I also have been spending my free time filming a special MR2 video project, which I'll show clips of in a bit, though the cold weather is definitely gonna put a delay on that too. I even have an MR2 review planned, but can't film it until it gets tolerable outside. So yeah, I'm kind of just waiting around now, but I promise I haven't given up. I've just hit a bit of a slowdown as I save up and wait for the weather to clear. Plus, I'm graduating college in a month, so I've been just focusing on not failing right now. But luckily, I should have more time after that is over with too. It has been nice driving the car though, at least when it's not snowing. Now, I don't want to put out a shorter than normal episode, but I also don't want to wait what could be another month for me to work on the car more to finally release a video. So I've decided why not finish the video up with an MR2 story time. These took place before I started filming my series, so I didn't have any footage to show, so I'm just going to show some relevant photos and some early draft footage of my MR2 cinematic while I talk. You are all very familiar with my MR2, and though it is a piece of work, I do love it and am relatively happy with what it is now, but this wasn't actually the first MR2 I tried to buy. It's not even the second one. Now, I've wanted an MR2 for years now, but I didn't start seriously shopping for one until a year ago. I'd check listings pretty much every day and nothing came up in my area that was running and affordable. I was also broke for quite a while too. But there was a point where I had saved up for months and even sold off my retro video game collection to buy myself a new camera, the one I use to this day. It was early last June, a week before I ordered my camera. I was taking a different route home from Darrington so I could do some location scouting for a video I was planning. Well, on my way, I drove past this little tow shop on the side of the road and immediately slammed my brakes, threw my car in reverse, and pulled up to it. The reason was I saw this, an MR2 parked out front that looked to be abandoned. Now, at the time, I was pretty set on buying my camera, but I was still checking MR2 listings as I was heavily considering getting one of those instead, but again, I just hadn't found one. I knew a camera was the right logical choice, but I still really wanted an MR2. This one was clearly very rough, but if I could get it for cheap, I'd still consider it. I mean, it had flat tires and looked like it had been sitting for a while, so the owner probably didn't care much for it. I got home that day and decided I had to ask about the car, so I called the shop and explained how I saw it and had to ask if it was for sale or not. Well, he told me it belonged to the guy who lived next to the tow shop and that I should ask him. He said he has even seen the car run too. So I wrote this note and planned on leaving it on their door in hopes they get back to me, and the next day I did just that. I drove for an hour back down, super nervous and debating if I'd really take it over my camera if it were for sale. When I got there, I got out of my car and took one closer look at the MR2. I peeked in the window and saw the worst possible thing I could see. It was automatic. I immediately rolled my eyes, crumbled up my letter, got back in my car, and drove home laughing. The second MR2 I tried to buy was later. I think it was sometime in July that year. I had found an MR2 in Aberdeen, which is like 3.5 hours away. It apparently was owned by an 80-year-old who could no longer drive, and I think a family member was selling it. They said it had a rebuilt engine from a few years back and was all stock. The only downside was it had a dent on the front fender and the paint was worn, but for $2,000, it seemed like a great deal though. Now, I texted the seller about it trying to get more information, and they were extremely vague and didn't answer any questions I asked. I explained I was interested but needed more information on it before driving down. Honestly, I didn't think the seller was necessarily sketchy, but they seemed to be old and terrible at texting. But even then, I offered to call if it was easier for them, which of course, he just ignored. I was super interested because of the price, but I still wasn't willing to drive down to look at it without having any of my questions answered and how sketchy the guy was being. I also noticed some odd stuff with the listing. The images didn't really match his description. He mentioned the hubcaps had been stolen, but they were clearly in the picture. Also, for being stock, the spoiler didn't look like any I had seen before. When I looked even closer, you could see the steering wheel was white or gray, but in the next picture, it was blue. And on top of that, it didn't even look like there were seats in the other picture. I didn't notice this at the time, but this photo is also from a Mark 1B T-top version, while the other photos are clearly a Mark 1A sunroof one. Well, after some more digging, I found the first picture was just some random MR2 taken off the internet from another state. I asked the guy if his pictures were placeholders or what, because they didn't match his description and weren't even the same car. Of course, I just got some random replies that told me nothing. Seriously, I cannot emphasize how annoying talking to this guy was. I feel like it's a common joke to talk about how bad Facebook or Craigslist sellers are at communicating, but let's just look at these texts so you truly understand. Hey, I saw the MR2 ad on Craigslist. Is it still available? Also, any pictures of the engine bay? I would love to see it. The car you have is one I have been looking for a long time, and I am very interested in swinging by and picking it up if it all checks out. Okay, tonight or 2:30 p.m. Tonight for pictures of the engine. Also, if you have any extra photos of the interior, that would be amazing too. I live up in Bellingham, but again, if I can just get some pictures to double check a few things, then I would be willing to drive down and buy it as soon as we both can line something up. Also, would you be allowing a quick test drive around the block? I would preferably drive it back home if you believe it can make it, so I just want to get a quick familiarity test before heading out. Tonight to show vehicle. Sir, it runs and drives extremely well. We drove 4 hours yesterday. Ah, well, I'd like to get a bit more info on it from you before making the long drive down if that is all right. But that's great to hear it runs strong. Again, could I get a few shots of the engine? Also, are the photos on the listing current? I noticed some things mismatching between two of them. Available to show this evening. So no photos then? Check the ad later. Thanks. I wanted the car, of course, but was pretty much about to call it quits. The guy even did text me to say he put new photos up, these ones actually with a Washington license plate and matching his description, but it just still wasn't worth making the drive for this guy. Just saw the new photos, so were the old photos just placeholder? They don't match the new car shown. New pics are up. But my sister actually called me and asked if I could pick up a barbecue grill for her in Portland. Very odd request, but her boyfriend is a chef, and it's this long story how this specific grill was sold out everywhere except for this one place that had one left. But anyways, I agreed and thought, well, I might as well go check out the MR2 on my way back since Aberdeen was another hour out of the way. I mean, I'm already down there. So the seller and I agreed on a time to meet, and I went on my way the next day. He even gave me an address to meet at. The next day, I texted him multiple times during my trip to make sure we were still on, and finally, he replied with a, "Sorry, we'll have to schedule another time." Just 1 hour away from when we were going to meet. Obviously, I was extremely frustrated and got the lamest excuse. It's funny, he made it out to be that I wasn't a serious buyer. Like, come on guys, I think we can all agree I am probably one of the most obsessive MR2 owners around. At the end of the day though, even if it was a killer deal, I have no idea if the car was really for sale or if the seller just really didn't care. But either way, there's not much you can do when you get a sucky seller other than move on and find another car to buy. And well, in the end, that's what I did. I later bought the one I own now. That has its own story, but I'll save it for another time. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this episode still, even though not much really happened. Again, once I graduate soon and the weather clears, hopefully I can spend some more time working on the car and filming in general. I'll probably have a month or two where I can just film videos as I look around for a computer science job too. Just sorry I've been busy lately. But still, thanks again to my patrons and donors. We got Will, Raleigh, Jordan, Matouche, Eddie, and Dusty Umbreon. Huge thanks. I actually have another pretty big channel announcement, but I'll be making a little video on that when I get a chance as well. But see you all next time.